meantime, I want to introduce you to Edgar Cahn, an amazing man. Edgar is a distinguished legal professor who served as counsel and speechwriter to Robert F. Kennedy. He co-founded the Antioch School of Law, which is now the David A. Clarke School of Law at the University of the District of Columbia, with his late wife, Jean Camper Cahn. Edgar has held positions at the University of Miami Law School, Florida International University, the London School of Economics, and a visiting fellow at the Center for the Study of Human Rights at Columbia University. Some of the most important work he accomplished was while serving as a lawyer for Cesar Chavez in the United Farm Workers. Edgar created the concept of TimeBanking, a community development tool that works by facilitating the exchange of skills and experience within a community. It aims to build the core economy of family and community by valuing and rewarding the work done in it. It is to this effort that Mr. Cahn devotes most of his professional life these days as CEO of TimeBanks USA, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that he established in 1995. I know you will find Edgar fascinating, but just between us, if you promise to keep it a secret, I'll let you know that we will be honoring Edgar at the close of our session tomorrow evening. So please keep that quiet. So with that, please welcome Edgar Cahn.
You are tackling an undervalued and invisible world that I have called the core economy. We know, and it may be useful to liken the core economy to the difference in a computer between the base operating system and the specific specialized programs that you run on that operating system. And so what I have done in looking at Civility is to regard it as really the rules of the game that need to be observed for the core operating system to function effectively and to run the specialized programs that the market promotes and that we view as the way in which you earn a living that generates money. But underneath those operating systems of market and professional specialties are basic rules of civility. And there has always been, even before everything else, there's always been a non-market system of those essential functions that family and community and clan and tribe performed for each other. It's now more important than ever to revitalize that core economy. And right now, we tend to be absorbed in what I'll call the formal system of services. And that formal system of services has needed to undergo change. We realized that when the war on poverty was first launched, that something called citizen engagement was needed. We came on the heels of urban renewal, which had created huge complexes, which then deteriorated rapidly because the whole question of civic engagement, the whole question of the responsibility of the residents had been overlooked. It was assumed that if you built a building, you had built community. And there was no sense of the importance of the engagement of the citizens, of the residents. So that we had to begin to rethink formal systems. Medical systems we're beginning to understand actually require that the patient do something, that it's not just a matter of injecting them and giving them pills, that there's a question of quality of life and there's a question of engagement. And that we're even beginning to learn that the non-participation by elders radically accelerates the likelihood of dementia and failure to really master new concepts and new demands. Uh, I decided that if I wanted to look at cause and effect, that I would always be finding myself looking at what money did do and what money didn't do, because we were allowing money and market price to define value. And we had to reject the monopoly that money and market price had on value. There, there are things that we have always known as priceless: caring, love, commitment, sacrifice, altruism, principled activity. Those go beyond and transcend price. And so we had to begin to create a different way of valuing what we said we valued, but in fact that we did not value. And that was why I created time banking as a way to send the message that the most precious thing we have is our time. It's our sliver of eternity. That's priceless. And so I created a currency called time banking that's now spread to 38 countries, and it generates flows of activity that value what everybody does in terms of time. So a fifth grader helping a third grader learn the alphabet is as valuable, that time is as valuable as anything I do with my legal training, writing a will or a contract or a commercial transaction. And we have used that currency, and we have then had to digitize that currency, and now the internet makes it possible for us to use time banking and to have it reflected on smartphones, so that on your smartphone, if you look, I need somebody to do hair, I need somebody to walk my dog, I need somebody to help plaster, and I can do things for other people. I can provide companionship, I can give them a ride. I can put the light bulb in the ceiling if they can't get up there. So the ways in which we can begin to rebuild community and redefine how we relate to each other renews and rebuilds that core economy. Now, you needed a different medium of exchange other than money, because money tends to drive out civility in return for exchanges. Yes, there are basic rules of credit and value, but civility isn't a key element of the market economy. Profit is the dominant principle. And so I think where I found myself going was to John McKnight's thinking about how do we define community? What does it take to build community? And he talked about an asset-based community development, which provided a kind of organizational framework that valued engagement and enabled grassroots groups, associations, and institutions to implement their own strategic plan to rebuild community and to extend trust. And then over that, I added the time banking system and the time banking, and we built the time banking software, which is proven to provide an effective tool for building civility. Now, I would welcome questions about how that works, but when you build a new medium of exchange, you can also build ways in which that can be used to address specialized needs. So you can see where one specialized need might be to provide the nurture and the contact and the interaction that you need from birth to 4 years old. In schools, we use time banking to deal with the fact that at third or fourth grade, students who were having difficulty reading were going to go into fourth grade without the ability to do the homework. So we put fifth graders to work as their teachers, teaching them how to read. And the fifth graders were much more useful as teachers, much more effective in praising and providing the guidance and approval that third graders wanted than grown-up teachers did. And so we literally bridged that third to fourth grade block. Then as kids got older, we said, well, who do kids listen to when they do something bad or when they make a mistake and get into trouble? Well, they listen to peers. So we created peer courts and teen courts all over the country where kids came before a jury of teenagers, and what we found was that recidivism when peers dealt with peers and punished them by community service and by requiring them to serve on the jury and begin to act like peers, recidivism for those teenagers dropped from 34% to 6%. And then we started looking at families, and we said a family that's headed by a single parent with 3 or 4 children has a rough time. All of our kids know exactly how to deal with us as adults. But if you put 2 adults together and 2 families together, they begin to work in a very different way as a collective, in a way that helps each other. So that we found out that that the need to take kids away and put them in foster care radically descended when you put 2 families together, 2 households together, and they each complemented each other. So what we're finding, if we want to build civility, is we need to rebuild the core economy of family and of neighborhood, and we need to go back to basics. We need to find a way of going underneath what market and price does to celebrate the power of universals, which are priceless, of caring and listening and taking time. And that's what I think the Civility Conference really celebrates. It celebrates not just being nice to each other, it really is honoring the core economy on which everything else depends. I would welcome questions, but I think that we can find ways in which, if we begin to honor the core economy as the way in which set the basic ground rules for how we relate to each other, that's going to affect what market does. It's going to affect what are the principles, because we have to deal with the externalities that market creates. And those externalities always come in terms of pollution and in terms of lack of civility. They always come back to uh, undermining trust, undermining our willingness to reach out to each other, and celebrating differences rather than celebrating what we have together. With that, I would say we need to reach out to each other, and I would invite any listener to tune into Time Banks, to to come to the timebanks.org website. We have a new executive director who comes out of the survivor movement for breast cancer, so she knows both organizational development, but she also knows what it takes to recover from breast cancer. And so she has a sense of the relationship between organizational development and physical development and spiritual development.
Some of the impact that money and finances play in creating an uncivil world, and more importantly, how we can use the concept of time banking to increase civility and increase our communication with one another. And while I've read a fair amount about it, I certainly look forward to learning much, much more about it. And I'm sure all of our guests look forward to hearing more about it during the panel and breakout sessions.